Hey folks, welcome back. I'm your host, R.R. Slugger, and today I wanted to share a mock I created recently based on a YouTube video that was based on some set dressing, that was based on some concept art. It's complicated. To begin with, if you're not already familiar with E.C. Henry here on YouTube, well, you should be, at least if you're a fan of Industrial Light and Magic's work with the Star Wars and Star Trek franchises. E.C. Henry puts painstaking effort into explaining and recreating the iconic visual details of these science fiction properties. It's kind of like my own How to Build Rock Raiders series, but for Star Wars movies, if that makes sense. Anyways, one of their videos recently inspired me to do something I don't normally do. Build with Lego. That might sound like a joke, but there's actually a lot of truth behind it. In making videos for this channel, I'm often writing about Lego, researching Lego, photographing Lego, but I'm rarely ever actually building with Lego. This video by E.C. Henry inspired me to break out the bricks and start building though. So how did it do that? Well, first we need to talk more about the subject matter here. In the original Star Wars movie, Tatooine is home to a conspicuous wrecked starship. This giant metallic corpse is located just outside the cantina, where Luke and company meet Han Solo for the first time. In the real world, this set dressing was created to both make the planet seem more alien and to hide various palm trees from the camera. Kind of a two birds, one stone situation with that. A production designer for the film, John Barry, drew up concept art for what the full ship might have looked like before the crash, and this is the source material that E.C. Henry used for his recreation. And his recreation is what I used for mine. Behold, the Lego Star Clipper. One of my primary goals with this recreation was that I wanted the finished product to look like the other original series Lego sets that were released back in the first wave of 1999. No new colors, no hyper detail, just simple bricks and plates all coming together to make a Lego facsimile of the source material. To that end, I think I was really successful. I'm quite satisfied with how the silhouette matches up to the sources I used, and the simplified color palette is right up my alley as a Lego fan. Broadly speaking, I think this is a cool ship design, and John Barry deserves a lot of credit for his imaginative work on Star Wars. Credit also has to go to E.C. Henry and his work on interpolating detail into his recreations. He really understands the visual language of Star Wars, and I'm simply fascinated by his work. I tried to capture many of his design choices in my mock, so let's go through some of them now. Firstly, my work on the Plastic Planes series has definitely influenced what I pay attention to in a model. This blue dual cheat line was one of the first details I thought about implementing. Ultimately, I decided on a simple brick versus plate height difference, and that seemed to do the trick. The rounded shape of the fuselage was going to be tricky though. Because I was using the old light gray color, I was limited to molds that existed prior to 2004, and the modern curved look of Lego really wasn't a thing yet. Best I had were plague parts, and well, you know how I feel about those. No, this build was going to be blocky, but intentionally so. There are probably dozens of newer molds that could better replicate these details, but I'm entirely the wrong builder for that. These cylindrical protrusions on either side, though, were a must-have element. They're frankly one of the only details in John Barry's original sketch. I couldn't call this a recreation without properly addressing them. Now, E.C. Henry interpreted these as being convex domes, but I think the original intention was that they were supposed to be concave, like what we see on the engines here. This is also reflected in the concept art of the wrecked ship, and honestly, it's what we see in the movie too. That being said, I think I prefer E.C. Henry's take on this detail, even if I think it deviates from the source material. I replicated it here by using a pair of 8x8 dish elements backed by some quarter-cylinder bricks. Throw in some classic snot techniques and you've got a pair of convex domes. I really enjoy how I was able to capture some of the line work using those old fingered hinge bricks, positioned above and below the laser cannons. Lastly, the slope bricks on the fuselage taper into the cylindrical protrusions, tying the whole thing together. Those 8x8 dish pieces kind of determined the scale I would have to stick to for the rest of the build. I noticed that E.C. Henry's digital model had a bluish tinge to the cockpit, so I chose the trans dark blue windscreen element that I thought would fit the best and went with that. What I managed to hide in here though was a fun little play feature. LEGO Space was always including random segmentation into their ship designs, even when it didn't make sense, so I decided to do the same. This entire front module is actually on rails and can be pulled away and removed. Just for fun, I decided to make use of a fairly novel connection. The black middle jumper plate on the main fuselage actually connects to the back of the blue space chair in the cockpit. It's a silly and frankly unnecessary part usage, but I think it's neat. When we open the cockpit, we can see that there are 2 pilots inside. This pair of down-on-their-luck spacers are a detail I lifted directly from E.C. Henry's video, trying my best to copy the outfits depicted there. I didn't give them names, but maybe we can brainstorm some ideas in the comments section. As we get to the midsection of the ship, we come to the engines. I don't have much to say about these quad thrusters. I do think my part selection here is top-notch though. These light gray wheel pieces on the front of each engine satisfy many of the details found on both the original concept art and E.C. Henry's recreation. Kind of a two birds, one... Oh, sorry, I already said that. You'd better believe that I made the dorsal hull removable so that you can access the interior. Again, I went with a connection type that might be a little unusual for this task, this time incorporating magnets into the design. There's something so satisfying about a magnetically sealed cargo hold. Within it, you have plenty of space to store any materials you need. Additionally, I added some simple detachable landing gear that can also be stored in the cargo hold when not in use. The aft section of the ship features some light greebling and 2 vertical stabilizers. The part usage found on the blue rudders was directly inspired by my experience with an alternate build for the T-16 Skyhopper. Honestly, though they're simple, I think these rear fins are one of the best parts of this build. To me, they feel pretty close to how I'd imagine the set designers of 1999 would have tackled the same problem. All in all, I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now to crash it into Mos Eisley. Thanks for watching, everyone. This was definitely a different kind of video for me, but hopefully you enjoyed it all the same. I've been your host, RR Slugger, and I'll see you next time for another video.